Let's call it like it is. Shawn Rhoden's 2018 Mr. Olympia win was a perfect storm of multiple factors. Now, I mean no disrespect, Shawn deserved to win the 2018 Mr. Olympia, but luck did play a key role here. Phil was obviously suffering with his gut issue, he was off, Big Ramy was still unable to crack his own code on his condition and he was off. Even guys like Dexter and Rolly couldn't pose real challenges to Shawn. Dexter's age was finally starting to show and Rolly was too incomplete and not conditioned enough. But one guy that was also a little off that many people were talking about winning this show going into it was William Bonac. Bonac was on at the 2017 Mr. Olympia. There's a small case for him to have won that year. And had he brought that crazy 2017 package to the 2018 Mr. Olympia, he arguably could have won this year too. So let's go ahead and test that theory. Could William Bonac at his all-time best from just the year before beat 2018 Mr. Olympia Shawn Rhoden? Did Bonac miss his opportunity or did Shawn have this on lock? Let's jump into today's video to find out. Remember, if you guys like these types of videos, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more. Now, sizing on this one should honestly be pretty accurate as they stood right next to each other in 2018, and that was my basis for this comparison. If anything, I shot Bonac's picks a bit under because I know Shawn's height is an advantage for him, and I wanted to make sure he got it. Anyway, we have the front double here, and I think this is kind of telling for this entire comparison, because Shawn's best shots are going to be the first two in the abs and thighs. He won 2018 because of the midsection and his aesthetics, and those things are a great recipe for our first shot. And yeah, he'll take a win here, but it's far from a convincing one. Putting the midsection aside for a moment, what does Bonac not win? In the legs, I prefer Bonac. He had incredible wheels at this point. The sweep was insane. Now, Shawn was very good too, so they're pretty much neck and neck, but I do like how Bonac poses his more. In the lats, I also prefer Bonac. They taper a bit lower and there's just more presence from them overall. And in the arms, you definitely have to go with Bonac. I think with both guys at their best, he'd win, but Shawn's arms were not at their best in 2018. They were a bit soft and deflated. So we've established that Bonac wins almost everything, but his problem is that he leaves the most important thing on the table, the waistline. The stomach itself is fine, in fact it's flatter than Shawn's, but the waist itself is wide and the shorter torso exacerbates this. For that reason alone, Shawn is going to get the edge. He has the much better silhouette, which is by far the most important thing here. But as I mentioned, this isn't really convincing at all. I like Shawn's pose more, but Bonac may have just as much of a right to this pose than him, to be honest. Overall, this is going to be the closest margin of victory possible, which in my comparisons is just a 1-point win. This is usually a 2 or 3-point win for Shawn in most of my matchups with him, which indicates a solid or dominant win respectively, but here this win is none of those things. What's even more surprising than the front double is the front lat spread. Bonac holds it down yet again, arguably slightly better than he was in the first pose. The amount of muscle per square inch on his physique is just crazy. This is why Bonac was on the short list for a short while to eventually take Phil Heath down, because Bonac was crazy 3D like Phil for one thing and very complete. Bonac makes Shawn look 2D by comparison, mainly through the upper half. The legs are crazy on each, so you can take your pick here yet again, but there's just muscle on top of muscle and Bonac's upper half. The arms, delts, and chest are no contest really. The lats are arguably not even going to Shawn either. I think they are, but barely. Really, he only looks a bit better in the lats because his waist is a bit smaller, which helps the lats look wider. He's not winning because the lats themselves are bigger. Shawn is more aesthetic overall with that said, and he is a bit taller, which helps in that regard, but this is another one that is really close. If you give this to Bonac, I really couldn't fault you. I'm not going to. I think people are already typing away in the comments about how I'm being disrespectful by even doing this video, so I'll give these first two shots to Shawn, but like the first one, this is only going to be worth 1 point. So far, Bonac has been holding up quite well in Shawn's territory, but turning to the side, we're going into more favorable poses for Bonac. But it's flipped now. I'm quite impressed with how well Shawn holds up here. He has pretty good thickness in the side chest, but at a much better height than Bonac, which does pull a lot of weight for Shawn. Shawn starts the pose off actually by taking the side leg. He's more balanced between quad, ham, and glute, while Bonac is really glute dominant. Shawn is also a bit drier and brings some glute feathering. So Bonac is solid, but Shawn goes a little bit further downstairs. But the upper limb definitely changes hands. The peak on Bonac's bicep alone is crazy. It's damn near touching his nipple. He has a really full tricep sweep too, but the delta is pretty much the same on both guys. And then in the pecs, Bonac reminds me of a smaller version of Ronnie Coleman. The pecs don't lose an ounce of fullness from sternum to clavicle, and the striations are so clean and again present top to bottom. Shawn has impressed me with how well he's holding up, but it's just not enough. Even from the overall perspective, Shawn has the height advantage, but doesn't give up a crazy amount of thickness, but Bonac is just so stacked. He looks completely maxed out in a good way. Good news for Shawn though, like when Bonac was trailing him in the first shots, I don't think Bonac gets too far ahead of him in this pose. I'm going to make the side chest a 1-point win too, but this time for Bonac. Shawn holds on no longer though, because when turning around in our first back pose at least, the Conqueror takes the easiest win of the video so far. Shawn's back has always been his weakest body part besides the triceps, and in 2018 I think it was at its weakest since the very beginning of his career. It's beyond underwhelming. Bonac on the other hand is on the greater list of best backs ever. His lats insert basically in his glutes, it's crazy, and it really shows how underdeveloped Shawn is when you compare lower lats and lower back to Bonac. The lats on Bonac are just hanging off him. There's incredible depth to his back, and again, he's very 3D. Shawn's upper back is a bit better than the lower and mid regions, but he's getting pushed around here too. He's very flat and shallow compared to William. Even the upper limbs on Shawn are poor, and I do mean poor for this pose at least. They're small, flat, and devoid of any level of detail that other areas of his physique have. Speaking of which, he does have a great lower body, mainly thanks to complete development and condition. But is he even winning here? If he is, Bonac is right there with him because he's pretty much doing all the same things. He's complete calves to glutes and shredded. Shawn is just a touch drier though. But all in all, you can look at this and give both halves of the pose to Bonac pretty easily. And Shawn is taking quite the beating in the upper half. I try to come up with an argument for just a 2-point win, but to tell you the truth, I don't think Shawn's pose is that redeemable. It's very mediocre, especially because his highlight, the lower half, is taken or at least disarmed by William being just as good, if not a little better there. So in a massive turn of events, I'm giving William a 3-point win in the rear double. The other back pose, the rear lat spread, offers another easy win for William. I wouldn't say it's as resounding because Shawn looks good in the lower half yet again, but he's wider here, which is the most important thing. But Bonac is very wide for his height, and the fullness of those lats top to bottom just puts Rhoden to shame. Even in the lower half, Bonac is right there yet again with Rhoden. I don't really think this needs too much explanation. We saw in the first back pose, Bonac is just clearly more developed, but Shawn gets a little more leeway here. So 2 points to Bonac. The losses do not stop there for Shawn, unfortunately. The side tricep shows how thickly muscled prime Bonac was, and in turn shows Shawn's clear lack of thickness. Shawn's pecs completely deflated here. That tricep is very flat and skinny too. Now the midsection is flat, that's a good thing, but Bonac is actually solid here, so even Shawn's main weapon in this shot, his only weapon really, doesn't pack too much of a punch. Bonac is very full in the pecs, has a massive arm. I don't really need to tell you who's winning these areas, but that midsection is passable, a little more than passable perhaps. It's tight, no bubble gut here, and the abs have decent cuts to them. He's not Shawn, but William is doing everything we ask for. I guess Shawn does have a win in the side leg to claim, but like in the side chest, William is great. Shawn just takes it a step further. Overall, Bonac is completely outmuscling Shawn really badly up top, and there's only so much the midsection and side leg components can do. This will be another 2-point win for William. Now this is the pose you Shawn fans have been waiting for. His Hail Mary is the abs and thighs pose, and I'm not going to be the one to underrate this pose, but let's look at what we have. Quads to quads, I actually slightly prefer Bonac, just because he's a bit better, but really they're very similar. They both have good sweep and great feathering. But up top, the abs certainly go to Shawn. Bonac has decent obliques, but of course this is not the pose we ask for in a head-on abs and thighs. I think really, even on its own discounted merit, I think it should just be a 2-point win for Shawn. Bonac technically does win half the pose after all, and he's solid up top, but since this is Shawn's signature pose, he's doing it correctly and extremely well to say the least, while at the same time Bonac isn't hitting it properly. Let's go ahead and just give Shawn the full 3 points in the abs and thighs. Bonac has decided to end this comparison in dramatic fashion with big wins and 2 distinct variations of the most muscular. He has the crab version up first, and we'll take a look at his hands clasped in a minute. For Shawn, he really just stuck to a hands on hip or clasped. Both are really similar. But anyway, for variation number 1, it's an easy win for William. He wins the quads even though they're pretty downplayed in this shot, but he just looks better yet again. And in this pose, the midsection is also downplayed, and sure, Shawn's going to win because he's just Shawn, but Bonac not putting up a fight at all here is kind of a win for him. It's just not a factor, which is a good thing because Williams' midsection is mediocre anyway. It's one less flaw to present and yet still get away with. And then through the upper body, Shawn just doesn't hold up. He's okay, but there's a stark difference, and not just the level of size and roundness, but even detail. I would say Shawn just barely holds on to keeping this at 2 points if we judge this variation alone, but that's pretty generous. And this second variation was just added for a proof of concept. William already slammed the door in Shawn's face in the first variation, but just take a look at what we have here. The level of muscle Bonac is carrying is quite frankly shocking. This shot is what made me a fan of Bonac in the first place. I think this is perhaps the most muscular looking, most muscular pose I've ever seen. It's not the best, but in terms of muscle per square inch, I don't think I've seen anything like this, especially in the upper half. Poor Shawn is completely out of his depth here. His pose is nice looking, aesthetic, sure, but he looks straight up skinny next to Bonac, except for the legs. I would actually give Shawn the legs. Bonac doesn't really present his too well here, but the sheer size of even the unflexed quads is incredible. But all the upper body stuff isn't even a discussion. He is comically bigger in the delts and the arms. The chest isn't better for Shawn either. Bonac is bringing double Ds. So with big wins and 2 variations, it's really hard to not make this a full 3-point margin for Bonac. I really only do that though if the opposition is really weak. Shawn isn't bad, I suppose, but Bonac is running so far ahead of him. I'll go ahead and make it 2 points, but honestly, this is just to prove my point at the end of the video. But before the end of the video, we have the second round of judging, which are the 4 overall physique categories. Let's start with muscularity. I originally had this as a 1-point win for William, but that last pose made me change my mind and he will now be taking 2 points. Shawn is taller and bigger on the scale, but he's obviously less muscular per pound and definitely less complete. Bonac built up quite the margin in this category with those back poses and with Shawn being so weak at the same time. Really, I don't think Shawn was more developed anywhere besides the abs, maybe the legs, but they're pretty even there. So even though he definitely weighed less and was a lot smaller, the more compact William takes a very easy victory here. Then we have condition, and they're both pretty close. I think this could really be a tie, but again, I want to prove my point in a second, and Shawn was a touch drier, so let's give him a small 1-point win here. And to further prove this point later, I'm gonna go ahead and give Shawn a full 3 points in the shape category as well. I think he has to take 2 points at minimum, but Bonac is quite respectable for open bodybuilding. That doesn't mean his wide waist gets a pass, but he could do a hell of a lot worse here with the shape. And finally, that brings us to flaws, and I'm just going to leave this one blank. Shawn is one of the more perfect physiques to win in Olympia ever, probably, so I don't think he's losing this category. And for Bonac, outside of things we've already counted, like the wide waist, he just really doesn't have any issues. No weird delts, gyno, torn muscles. That's a textbook definition of no flaws, at least for the purposes of this category. Alright, that brings us to the final scores, and let's rip this band-aid right off. Winning this comparison with 56 points was the conqueror William Bonac, while Flexitron Shawn Rhoden scored 44 points. Well, that's a difference of just 12 points, so that's not bad, right? That's what some of you are probably saying right now. But honestly, I think this was a fairly clear William win. This was actually one of the better case scenarios for Shawn. If we kept running this simulation, I bet William would win more often than not, and win by bigger margins on average. I was pretty generous to Shawn here, giving him big wins in his hallmarks like the abs and thighs pose and the shape category. I also cut him some slack in other areas. So with that said, I think a prime 100% William would beat 2018 Shawn Rhoden. I mean, really, Bonac would just be picking up right where Phil Heath left off. Phil was winning Olympias easily because he was very round and 3D, although not necessarily the biggest guy, but he was definitely the most shredded and the most complete guy at the show every single year. As I mentioned earlier, this is why Bonac was looked at as one of the guys next in line to take Phil's place after his reign. Really, Bonac is just Phil Heath light. And compared to 2018 Phil, he's arguably better, at least he's more apt to take Shawn on. William is very complete, very 3D, very conditioned, but he didn't have that bubble gut issue. So on paper, he's just Phil without the baggage. And that's pretty much what happened between Shawn and Phil. In 2018, Phil won more poses easily. He won the substance debate, but certainly couldn't win with that stomach. Bonac won more poses against Shawn and won his poses easily. Shawn barely got 2 in addition to his abs and thighs pose, which was his only compelling win. And Bonac won muscularity like Phil would and did, and Bonac kept condition very close. I even gave 3 points to Shawn in shape, which is definitely what I would have done between him and Phil in 2018 with my scorecard. But Phil would have taken another 3-point loss in the flaws category for that stomach. Bonac had no such problem. Honestly, while I was looking at photos from the 2018 Olympia for this video, I actually think Bonac could have pushed Shawn even there. Rolly probably should have been 4th, and Bonac should have been 3rd, maybe even 2nd, depending on how much you want to knock the former champ off for that gut. And if I'm saying that about an off Bonac, it's clear to me that a 100% on William beats Shawn Rhoden's Olympia winning package. Unfortunately for William, bodybuilding is all about being in the right place at the right time. Think of how many wins Jay Cutler or Kevin Levrone might have if they didn't have to contend with Ronnie and or Dorian Yates. Had William Bonac peaked like he did in 2017 just 1 year later, I think Mr. Olympia history would be very different. Well, that's going to do it for today's video. I know this is going to be a hot take, but I really don't think it should be. But as always, let me know your thoughts about this matchup down in the comments below. And if you guys like this video, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more. And if you want to get your hands on some high quality supplements while supporting my channel even further, head over to Arms Race Nutrition. Then at checkout, use my code Project10 for 10% off your entire order. That's code Project10 at armsracenutrition.com. And finally, with all that said, I want to thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.
Get Alexia.